This is the CreaseCast.
Why don't I start off the episode with me talking about how Roberto Luongo was a mistake and the worst goaltender in the Canucks era.
I'm gonna walk all the way back to BC and I will kill you.
You don't even say anything. You just push your chair back, put your headphones down.
Yeah, I just
start walking.
Yeah, I just start walking.
Yeah. I will see you in.
And I'm mad, so it's a nice brisk pace.
Ooh, it's like have you ever seen the movie It Follows?
I have not, no.
So It Follows is like a movie where when it's like a curse that you transfer to someone that you have sex with. So this girl has like a one night stand with this guy that she thinks like he's into, and everything seems fine. And then he like kidnaps her and locks her in this like abandoned warehouse. And he's like, I need to show you what I've given to you that was given to me. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it's about these ghosts that no one else can see that slowly walk towards you forever. And when they get to you, they kill you. They don't run, and they take different forms. So they would look like just random people you may have encountered in your life or whatever. You have no idea what they look like, but they will always walk towards you and kill you until you have sex with someone else and you pass it along to them. And it just keeps on going, right?
What? What movies are you watching, sir?
It's an awesome movie. It is super spooky and creepy. And the idea that
sounds like the worst game of tag ever.
it is.
Jesus.
It is kind of weird too, because like I swear to God, like they're supposed to be like 18 or something in the movie. So it's like kind of like a bit gross. It's all about like, it's about growing up, and like it's a lot of allegories for different things going on. But like it's
that sounds like
it's probably not your kind of movie, but the idea of you getting so mad about me flaming Roberto Luongo that you would just start walking north back to Canada to seek out vengeance gave me very much It Follows vibes. Lach follows. But yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to episode
welcome to this
124.
Show. Jesus.
The show where we talk about...
What a start.
Yeah, no kidding.
We have an explicit tag for a reason.
Do we actually?
Yeah, every episode is marked explicit just in case, because
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, no, definitely can't imagine. I never wanted it to be, because even if I don't like necessarily personally, I try very. You're very professional. I try my best, like only to swear when it's absolutely necessary, which is sometimes.
When you do, it's very like, oh man, he's serious. Like,
he's really mad, right?
Yeah,
I try to reserve it for when I absolutely need to. But I always leave it in a safety because I don't want to like stifle people. Like I don't like if somebody just needs to go off on that kind of a tangent, I want to leave if like guests or yourself. Like I always want to leave them the option. So I'm never gonna stifle them on that one. So they can go right ahead.
Every podcast I've done outside, I'm always like, I'm not going to swear, and then I'll accidentally drop it, and every time it'll be like, oh, are we allowed to swear on this show? I always forget. Like, you're on Roxy Fever, even though like I've heard them swear like every single episode all the time.
Like, oh God, guys,
I screwed up. I'm
such
an idiot.
Like, yeah, you're like, oh shoot, right. I'm so sorry. Like
I turned into Mark Scheifele when I'm on a podcast where I'm just like, oh shoot, gang, frick.
Pardon my French, guys.
Golly
gee,
and I hate to swear like that. But
speaking of just being a genuinely nice person, two very nice people got hired by the Canucks yesterday, or worst kept secret in Vancouver. It's probably been hired for a while, but
Yeah, do you think anybody was surprised by this news at this point? Like, do you think there was some guy who like came out of a cave and was like, "Oh, the Sedins were hired"? Wow, because it feels like it was just like everyone was playing the waiting game. But
that's honestly a really good question. Like in terms of because you and I are both Twitter people, and all the people that we interact with are Twitter people who are obviously like very much on more or less like not 24/7, so they're always on top of it. I do wonder if, like, say, if you had to say, like, Facebook or, like, a different social media site, or just people who don't use, like, who aren't as active on social media, for them it might have been a surprise because they're not always talking about it. I wonder if it would be. I wonder, like, or if they are just as, no, but I mean, yeah, it was the worst kept secret in Vancouver.
Or even better question, do you think there was anyone who's like, who are the Sedins? Like fans that just like hopped on like the train, because I mean that's possible. There's like, you know, a 14-year-old born in 2007.
Oh,
is that what it is? 2007 and you're 14 now?
Really? Wow, holy cow. There are going to be some young people who don't know, who I guess don't know. I will argue that the Sedins as a unit, I should be a bigger, like, maybe this is a hot take, but like they should be a bigger story. Like their careers should be a much bigger discussion in terms of like the whole sports landscape. Like they're like the fact that not only are they twins who played on the exact same team, but they ended up being like two of the most just lethal scorers in hockey. Yeah, most decorated players in the history of the game as a two, and could like communicate basically with a just instinctively knowing where the other was going to be. Like, how is that not like an ESPN 30 for 30 documentary at this point? How are they not one of the biggest stories in sports? Like, that's nuts. Like, that's absolutely nuts.
I have a theory. Mark Borowiecki of the Nashville Predators had a piece basically for the Nashville Predators like celebration of Pride Day or Pride Month or whatever it was. And in it, he basically outlines how there is an inherent masculinity or whatever that comes with hockey players, where they all try to act tough and whatever. And as Canucks fans and Vancouver fans know, the Sedins were derided and criticized for their entire career for appearing, and I'm using air quotes for all those not following along to the YouTube channel, for being soft. There was the Sedin sisters comment that was, I mean, embarrassingly created by the Vancouver market with Neil McRae back on CKNW. So you know why they aren't as big of a deal as they are, because they played the way in a game, in a sport that doesn't typically reward players for playing as honorable or as devoid of, you know, violence and goonery that they played. And you're right. They should be like, I mean, they should be brought up every single basically day, every broadcast.
Not in the same degree, obviously. Like, I'm not saying this based on in terms of like comparing them directly to this specific like kind of player, but I look at say like a guy like Bo Jackson, right? Like a guy who's famous because he played in two professional leagues at the same time, which again is kind of a story that doesn't get talked about a lot anymore, which is wild, because that's incredible that he played in the NFL and the MLB at the exact same time. And
was very good at both.
And very good at both. And Deion Sanders, same thing. Both did that. In fact, I believe Deion Sanders had a,
wasn't he?
Did Torello? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know much about.
I might be mistaken, but anyway,
I do know Deion Sanders played for both the Atlanta Braves and the Atlanta Falcons within, I believe, the same week. I believe at one point, because they were in the World Series at the same time as the Falcons were just playing the regular season, so he played for both within like that time frame.
That's sweet.
But like the Sedins are kind of like a case of where, okay, maybe they weren't the absolute best guys of all time, sort of thing. Like maybe they're not Wayne Gretzky, but they get they deserve to be talked about in that kind of aspect of, hey, these guys did something incredible that has never been seen in pro sports, and deserve to get that kind of recognition for it from the wider scale. And especially like you mentioned the being like tagged as soft, like in again heavy air quotes on that one. But like that doesn't explain necessarily, like I wouldn't say that explains why. Well, it kind of does in terms of why the rest of the sporting world, because again, they played the right way in a sport that constantly tries to make you play the wrong way. Like is built
encourages you to play the wrong way.
Encourages you to play the wrong way. They
Yeah.
played the right way, and they were very damn good at it. And in that kind of degree, in that same level, they didn't get the same amount of, like, say, star billing that some other players got in the league, in the NHL, which in turn meant they weren't as recognizable to people that weren't following the sport. Like, even people who don't watch hockey generally will know who, say, Sidney Crosby is. Like, they'll know who he is. They might not know a lot about him, but they'll know, oh yeah, he's a hockey player. Like, they'll know who that guy is. They'll know who him or Alex Ovechkin and maybe Connor McDavid is at this point. They will know those guys. The Sedins never got that kind of treatment, even though you could argue for a period that they definitely should have. And a lot of that is because the sport didn't like the way they played, which was the clean way, the clean, good way of playing hockey. And so it's exciting to see the fact that they're going to get to actually have a say in how the sport is ran, specifically when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks. The fact that they've been hired as special advisors is awesome. Like, it's incredible.
And the fact that, like, by their own admission, they were like, we could have taken presidential roles or whatever, something with like a very honorable title, but they wanted to start from the ground up and learn the tools of the trades, because of course they are, right? Like,
they're the best people. Good Lord.
Because like some goon in the current present day NHL is gonna be like, I want to be an executive, and he's gonna be handed it, and he's gonna be awful, because that's, the old boys club way of doing things. But of course, they defy the old boys club way of doing things by saying, we're going to start off by just learning everything: expansion draft, trades, cap management, AHL management, development, like placing a heavy emphasis on culture development, like basically taking what they remember from their prime years with Mike Gillis running the ship and seeing how they can advise the team into creating a better culture and a better organization, top to bottom. Like, that's so cool, frankly, that they would, recognize that, like, hey, we're just players, but we've always been interested in this, but we're not ready to just be AGMs or whatever. Yeah. Like, we obviously need to learn. And I don't think there's that many pro athletes that would be humble enough to do a press conference today for an hour or whatever, where they're basically like, yeah, we're going to try our best and we're committed to the role, but we don't know everything. Like, that takes guts. And that's, what do we
always say? What do we always ask from the Canucks is accountability. We always ask from the management to be accountable and to own up to the fact that you're not going to have that sometimes you don't have all the answers. So already just a good start on the fact that they're already saying, we're not going to know everything here. We're not going to come in and just be geniuses right out of the gate. We're not going to nothing's going to get fixed overnight. The way that the Sedin, and the fact that the Sedins have that experience, not only at the NHL level of seeing what works, what I honestly might be more important is they've also seen what doesn't work. And they've seen, and again, like we just talked about, like in the whole, the culture of what they had to go through as players who played a style of hockey that was considered by pundits to be soft. They can now have the opportunity to go into a program and affect real change of, okay, we're not going to look at that like that way anymore. We're not going to look. We are going to very much not factor that in as a reason to say not drafting certain guys or not trading for certain guys. I think the fact that they're going to come in with knowing what worked for them, but also seeing what didn't work is great. And because again, I don't think a lot of star players with their billing have seen both sides to that degree. Like
both sides as fast as they did, right? Because it wasn't just like, it isn't like where you have a star player who wins a cup in his first 4 years. He toils for a while and then he's on a bad team. It was like the Sedins were right there with one of the best teams in the league for like 4 years straight. And then they became one of the worst teams in the league for 4 years straight under two different management groups. They had the Gillis years when they hired Tortorella and it didn't go well. They had a bit of a resurgence with Jim Benning and the Willie D year, but then it was awful hockey for 3 other additional seasons where they saw the bottom of the barrel of what doesn't work. And so it is fascinating now, having seen both sides of the coin and probably having a ton of experience with what works and what doesn't work, to now be in a managerial role where they can, like you said, affect positive change, where they say, hey, you don't need to get Jay Beagle on the team, because we can get into some of the quotes from the Sedins themselves, but they really place an emphasis on the young players taking another step, and made additional comments that basically said, if you're getting a big payday, it's great if you overplay that contract. So in a sense, they're basically saying the guys that are getting paid aren't playing up to their current deals and they're not playing good enough. At the same time, the young players are in a position where they need to take that step and actually be able to make up for what the overpaid guys aren't producing. And that's where they want to come in and see what they can do to affect change and development, so that, guys like Pedersen, guys like Hughes, guys like Jack Rathbone, like how these guys can take that next step to be credible pieces to a core that moves forward. And that to me is very interesting, because Louis Eriksson was signed to a $6 million deal specifically to play with Daniel and Henrik because of chemistry that they had in the Worlds. And it didn't work from day one. It did not work. And a lot of that also has to do with coaching.
Big time.
Like Eriksson's entire highlight reel of goals from his last year in Boston is him playing around the net and picking up rebounds and greasy goals. He could score, but that was his bread and butter, was the net, which doesn't really gel with the Sedin style of cycling.
He was not. They didn't this is really this kind of part is kind of conversation for a different show. But Jim Benning didn't understand why. If there was one thing maybe Jim Benning didn't understand with that signing, it's the difference between, say, a Louis Eriksson and an Alex Burrows. Why Alex Burrows works as a contributor with the Sedins and Louis Eriksson doesn't. Because to be fair, not every player is the right player to put there. They will make just about any player you put with them better, but doesn't always mean it's a good fit. You could chemistry is huge, and this is kind of like the Oli Ulevi pick, right? So they saw one tournament where Ulevi played admittedly very, very good, well, but they used that as justification for why he would pan out as a full-time NHLer. Sometimes those bets work, but when you're in a top 5 position, that isn't a good idea. But the Worlds, where they saw the Sedins have pretty good chemistry with Louis Eriksson, they saw a small sample size and were like, yep, that's all we need to see. It's probably going to work at the NHL level. And you mentioned Benning and Gillis in terms of the different cultures that they've seen as well, in terms of what they can bring to the table. Worth also factoring in also as well, they were also here for the Burke era. They were also here for the Brian Burke era, which is a whole other chapter of their careers, which is very different from the other two. Yeah,
they're drawing on from a lot.
They got a lot of very good experience in terms of what you can see from a managerial standpoint. Because there are lots of players. There are lots of, again, like we've said before, a lot of star players get into the league, end up having a cast around them that is there almost their entire time, the entire time they're in the league. Again, Crosby is a very good comparable here because they have been not the same amount of time, obviously, but similar kind of eras where Crosby very much, has had the same core group almost his entire career. I think they've had maybe a couple different GMs, but overall pretty successful. On the ice, they've had the same ownership, the same kind of culture in terms of that hockey team has been with that group the entire time they've been there. Whereas the Sedins have lived through multiple different types of management groups, ownership groups, different
West Coast
mentalities of how
era.
the sport is approached. Playing for Mark Crawford versus playing for Alain Vigneault versus playing for Desjardins and Travis Green. They've seen a lot of different mentalities and approaches to the game walk through the door. And they've seen, like you mentioned, they've seen the best of times, they've seen the worst of times, they've
The blurst of times.
They've seen the blurst of times for sure. I think the Mark Crawford era, that's a perfect way of describing the Crawford era.
The
blurst of times. Pretty good at times, very bad at the worst times. Like the blurst.
And you could turn off your headphones
Coast Express
for this.
Era.
Blurst Coast Express.
Yeah, there you go. That's a that's it.
It's fair because it's like they had like this dominant line. They had the
dynamite team.
They had the West Coast Express, and it was just like, oh, but you got Cloutier and Net, and in between,
you got Cloutier and Net, and clutch and grab was a thing.
In between fighting opposing goalies and opposing forwards, he was letting in 7 goals in your playoffs in the most important games.
Also, one of your best players tried to kill somebody on the ice, which pretty much derailed your entire season. And
it couldn't have happened at the worst time because it happened right as the salary cap era began. So you had that whole break.
Literally right as the trade, on the day of the trade deadline, I believe that game happened that year. So they didn't even have time to be like, oh, well, we're going to have to go and trade for somebody new to come in. They literally couldn't fix anything at that point.
They were
just the terrible timing. So I guess we should get into like the quotes of the Sedins and everything. And again, this is like the importance of, how this is different from, say, Trevor Linden coming in. And why, because I think a lot of people very early on are going to be like, or at least during the times before the hiring happened, we're like, how is this any different from Trevor Linden coming in? Whereas, that was very much seen at the time as a PR move to take some weight off of the team. It was a guy who had no presidential experience taking on a presidential role. And in the end, it's backfired, definitely. It's not been a complete disaster, but it's not been good. It hasn't worked out great.
No.
It hasn't been a success either. So now that he's gone.
It was kind of funny because, obviously Trevor's hiring was, felt like a PR move purely because, every single game Trevor was there and they would, show the audience Trevor Linden's in the building and everyone would fucking go nuts. Even when he was a president, they would still do it. Even after they'd, been like a shit team, people would still go nuts because he's beloved by the city.
Yeah,
and
still is for all by all accounts.
He just doesn't go to the games anymore for a pretty good reason. But relative to the Sedins, though, he had experience running the NHLPA as the president or whatever.
The player representative, I believe, for the league or something.
And so he had experience, dealing with obviously a lot of members of the player base and the league itself. He had his gym franchise that he'd been running for pretty much outside of hockey. So he did have experience in a corporate world, and I'm using asterisk there because this they can call it corporate, the upper management side of hockey ops, but it's a very it's not the real corporate world that we're used to. But the Sedins, they've basically been just chilling, doing family stuff, relaxing, raising their kids, watching hockey, and then they were like, you know what, we want to get back into it, which, to anyone like an observer, you'd probably have some aspersions about the fact that they're wanting to come back and be hired into an executive committee role. But as we had said in our little intro thing, the fact that they're not coming in to be immediate executives, they're joining the team in an internship type position where they're going to be doing everything and learning everything imaginable to just learn the business, basically. Jim Benning had his quote where he's like, I still have final say, but their input is something that we value and are going to be taking with us in all areas of decision making, which to me, quells any fear that this is a PR thing. They just want new voices in an organization that basically laid off the majority of them over the past 7 years.
Yeah. And I will say though, that's a very key quote in terms of like how this could go very well or very badly. In terms of like, okay, yes, like Jim Benning saying that, he gets final say. Totally fair. That's totally fair. It's his job. They're working underneath him more or less. This is that's the role that they're given. That's understandable that he is going to have the final decision on everything, and it doesn't always mean he's going to listen, but it doesn't always mean he's going to take their advice. The key point thing here is that if you never listen, if you have to take it seriously into consider. If you're Jim Benning, and I guess John Weisbrod to a degree, but I believe this is more in regards to Benning than anyone else. Because I mean, we haven't even heard from Weisbrod in
we don't even know what he does.
Time. We don't even know what he does. With Benning, this will, if he listens to them and takes their advice seriously, and doesn't, and if it's more importantly, if it's an opposing view from his, he doesn't just dismiss it entirely. He doesn't just immediately dismiss it because it's not the same thought process he has. This will go great. This will go well, because the whole point, as with this isn't just for hockey. This is in all types of business and all types of work relationships. The more collaborative the more collaborative you are, the more different voices you have in a room, the better the final product becomes, because you're able to work as a group to find the best solutions. And sometimes people are going to have better ideas than you because they're going to see something in a different way than you would have.
Instead of an echo chamber of the same 3 voices or 4 voices. Like, you're going to get variety, which allows you to open up your discussion beyond what you're just kind of pigeonholing yourself into discussing over and over again.
Yeah,
so that's
far more opportunities for critical thinking, and that's great. Yeah. I will not, dump on the Canucks for bringing in more people, bringing in the Sedins as actual voices to be in that management group and to take part in those discussions and everything. And I will say furthermore, I think the fact that Henrik and Daniel were like, we're not always going to agree on stuff ourselves. It was kind of kind of nice, because sometimes, because again, there's the whole idea with the Sedins that, they agree on everything, because that's just the mentality. That's just the way we associate them together, is that they're always thinking the same thing. But that's good that they're not always going to have the same ideas. But the key thing is, if he doesn't listen to them and he just only does, and Jim Benning does things only by his way or the highway, which again, let's be clear, there's precedent for that, where Jim Benning has not always taken the people who have a different point of view in mind when decisions need to be made. If he doesn't do that, it won't work, because if you're not listening to anybody, the whole point is lost. So
exactly.
If for this to work, it's the onus is on Jim Benning to make sure that he's listening. It doesn't mean he has to absolutely do everything they say, but it doesn't mean he has to listen. He just has to be open-minded, be able to be open-minded to the fact that sometimes, whether that's Henrik, Daniel, or somebody who's not a Canuck, somebody who isn't a famous name, like sometimes those people are going to have a better idea than you. And it's on you. And as the GM, it's on you to make sure that you're listening and keeping an open mind to those things. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. No matter what role they're in, it won't work. You have to just make sure you're taking the time to listen to them. For this to be a success, that's how it's got to go.
Yeah. I'm also, like, on that note, I'm kind of curious who drove the bus on the whole hiring of the Sedins. Like, is this a Francesco Aquilini thing where he was like, I don't like the direction my team has taken. I've lost a lot of key voices to my managerial staff. Why don't I reach out to 2 people who I very much respect for, their on-ice play, their character, and what I think they could bring to my team? Or is this a Jim Benning thing where he's recognizing that there is a serious, echo chamber they have right now without many voices. And so he sought out the 2 guys he respected a lot from his time as a GM of the Canucks and said, these guys seem really smart. Why don't I reach out to them and see if they'd be interested in an executive position? Or did the Sedins just kind of make this happen by talking to people in the organization? Because as they said, they spoke to quite a few people ahead of time during the hiring process. One of those was former president of hockey operations, Trevor Linden. The other person was current senior advisor to the organization, Stan Smeel, who's been with the organization
forever,
fucking ever. Like
literally, I don't think he's ever. I think
forever.
Since he was drafted, he has never not been part of the organization in some capacity. Like I don't think there has ever been a time where he hasn't been.
So this is a complete side note, but after my Botchford project, I tried to write a story actually about Stan Smeel. I had my father-in-law is a cameraman for Global News, and he has like a very funny story where like in his first year on the job, he would film the practices at the Canucks practice arena.
Oh, that's so cool.
So he was like, he used to like fly on the plane. He was on the plane for when they were flying back from
really
the Islanders
cool.
series. Like he's got tons of experience with them. And he said he was always impressed by Stan Smeel because he was just like a brick shit house basically. And one of the practices he was like, I don't know, he's like leaning because they didn't have the glass back then, right? So he was leaning over the boards with like his camera on one side and just not paying attention. And Stan Smeel like fired a puck right where my father-in-law's arm was hanging over the boards, and it kind of perked him up a bit because he had pulled his arm away and he had the camera out and he's like, "Oh," and then Smeel skated over and he's like, "Don't keep your arms over the boards. Like if this is exactly why I shot the puck over at you, because if you have your arms over the boards, you're gonna lose it." And so there's like a huge like learning moment for like my doe-eyed like father-in-law in his first year on the job, where he's like, "Okay, I will always listen to you guys."
100%, Mr. Smeel.
Yes, Mr.
Sorry,
Smeel.
It won't happen again.
And,
won't happen again. They're probably like, and by that, and in that era, he's probably like quite close in age, which is very funny.
I think he might have actually been like maybe like 3 or 4 years older than him at the time too.
It'd be I can't say like, in my, like for me, I'm almost like certain if I were born in like a different kind of era, if I met like say like Elias Pettersson for an article, I'd be like, "Hi, Mr. Pettersson." Even though he's like 2 years younger than I am. Yeah. Like whereas now I think it's much more casual now. Like the media landscape, it's much more casual.
They have nicknames for each other.
Like, you can be like, "Hey," you can call them by their first name. They're not you hear people call Travis being Travis. Like they're not like
Trav.
It's not like, whereas like if you hear some of like the older hockey media people, they're like, "How dare you address them as coach?"
Yes.
Like that is like the only way to, I think that was a tweet recently actually. Somebody got in like somebody was the character for Twitter that day because he was like, "You address them as coach and that is it." And everyone's like, "What is wrong with you?" No, you. It
was like an attempted like check your privilege type tweet or something like that. I can't remember, but it was very funny. But anyway,
everybody knows that the only way to address a player is you go, "Well, how about you guys just go, well, fuck it," and just do it next time. Why don't you just do it? Like, why don't you just come back at it next year without? Yeah, that's the only way to. That's the only way to.
You definitely have to swear on a public.
You definitely get it.
That's absolutely what you have to do. That's how they know
on a nationally televised interview. Well done
on NBC. Totally done. Anyways, complete aside, that was my basically my crust, my lead into Canucks PR. I was like, okay, I have this like story about my father-in-law. I'm just gonna tie it in to be about Stan Smeel and the fact that he was there for like my father-in-law's like first year, and he's now like in his job currently like 40 something years, and Smeel has been up and down the organization from a player to a coach to assistant coach to director of player development to AHL coach to now senior advisor.
Literally goes through Stan Smeel, like it's right
everything. But unfortunately, when I pitched the article, it was around the time I think that Trevor Linden it was around the time that Judd Brackett was getting fired, and it was kind of in the same time when everyone came in for the Sedin's jersey retirements, and Stan Smeel had, according to several of the people that were there, they were asking Stan Smeel about Trevor Linden coming in for the Sedin's retirement jerseys, and he kind of went off on a giant tangent about how Trevor Linden is like wasn't given enough respect as the president of hockey operations, and like basically just like went to bat for Trevor Linden, even though obviously like everyone kind of knows Linden was forced out by J.
I don't remember this. I don't remember this.
Do you remember this?
This nugget? No, I don't remember this nugget. But wow, that's nuts.
I'd have to.
I hope you didn't just. I hope you didn't just accidentally.
No, it was
give away insider info or something.
No, this was like public. This was like Ian McIntyre or something being like basically just like.
I don't remember this at all. Wow.
It was like in a interview with Stan Smeel about like Sedin night or whatever. He went to bat for Trevor Linden and like his legacy and just like how important he was to the franchise, basically because the way the talks about the franchise at the time was just like, what a joke. Like no one respects anyone. And he was like, oh, that's not true. Everyone respects Trevor, like blah, 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 blah. And was kind of like, oh, maybe we have to put a cap on some of the people in the management staff, because obviously everyone's talking about Joe Brackett leaving and we don't want.
And then everybody, and remember, and obviously last season, you heard from nobody up until very recently when all the coaches started getting radio opportunity, which was good, which was very good. And that was a huge helper for the organization in terms of resetting their image a little bit.
As we've said many times on this program, the only person you ever heard from last season was Travis Green. And
Travis Green and
Jim Benning
sometimes.
And Jim Benning's very few press conferences went about as bad as any press conferences possibly could when it came to PR.
This was his best one because he didn't have to.
This is his best one. He was asked 3 questions, and they came after they asked the Sedins about the cap situation compared to 2007. And Henrik had an amazing quote, which, I mean, maybe I don't know if he's taking a shot necessarily at Jim Benning. I don't think it's intentional. Like, I highly doubt the Sedins are the types to ever throw a shot at anyone. But it's hard to not read the quote that I'm about to read to you as like a shot at the fact that some of the players that Jim Benning has identified and handed contracts to are kind of underperforming and playing like shit. And it's a shot at his ability to identify talent. But Henrik on the cap situation said, it's fairly easy to build a good team if every player can outplay their contracts. You want to have players that you want to have players that want to play here and be successful here. We had some great pieces then and great pieces now, which is very funny given the Eriksson thing, because it's like everyone thought like he was being brought in to be their guy. And this is almost like a shot at their former line mate being like, you got to play like you want to be here, dude.
No, yeah, hold on. I don't know. Like, here's the thing. That's how I read it. I like, just from like how the Sedins carry themselves, like, I don't think they're that kind of like backhandedly petty. Like, that's not their style. So I honestly think that's just an honest answer. I don't buy, I personally wouldn't buy that. That's like looking at you, Louis.
Yeah, I highly doubt he said that quote with any like visual in his mind of who he's talking about. But of course, for Canucks fans, like, how long have we been talking about Eriksson's like effort level? Like,
yes,
like every
I mean,
year
I've already written, like, I almost feel like Eriksson's a non-factor at this point. I've already written him off as like not as even being a part of the team at this point. Like, I don't even consider him. When I think of the roster, I don't even think of Louis Eriksson at any point. So.
You're thinking of like where he's going to slot on the AHL team, basically.
Yeah, that's where he's at. When I think of like of guys who need to outplay their contracts and guys who have not been able to, again, through like as we always say, through no fault of their own, rather than the people who gave them those contracts.
Yeah.
You look at guys like Jay Beagle and Antoine Roussel and Tyler Myers being a huge one. And you just look at those kinds of players and you go, well, this is why you're having trouble. You gave too much money to players who maybe could, and you paid a premium for guys who didn't need to be paid a premium to get. And now that has more, and not only has that major team not as good as it could potentially be, it's also made it more difficult for you to sign better players because you've already tied up that money. So you can't get the better players that would outplay those contracts. So that's a fair, and that's true. Like, I mean, looking back on it, like, I believe that Canucks team was full of players that were just playing way better than than the money they were making. Especially when you consider like how much less money was in was the salary cap at that point in like 2011 compared to 10 years later. It's a lot lower. And literally, like, I believe how much was Lou make? Like, Roberto Luongo was making $5.3 million a year. That's
Jesus.
Like, for comparison, Carey Price is now making, or Sergei Bobrovsky is making $10 million to sit on the bench. Roberto Luongo is the best goalie in the world for about 2 years, for at least 2 years, and he only made $5.3 million a season because what a damn steal!
What a bargain.
Just like wild. I think absolutely wild.
I think at the time, maybe the $5 million would have been like a higher percentage of the cap, though.
Because that was one of the contracts that was deemed illegal later on. Technically, his base salary for some of those years was like, okay, so his base salary in 2011 officially was $10 million. Like, officially, like on the cap that year. And that was the first year of that contract. That was year one. So his actual, like, if you manage it out by the way it's done now, where every year the cap has to be the same even amount, it evened out to 5.333, 5 1/3. But literally by the next season, it was already down to 6.7, which is still just wild for what you were getting out of Roberto Luongo.
The value you were getting out of it was just like
ridiculous. The year that he should have won the Vezina and the Hart Trophy in his first season with the Canucks, he only made $6 million. His cap hit was set with 6.75, but that's still just ridiculously cheap for what you were getting out of Lou. And that's just scratching the surface of that whole team and how perfectly and how well balanced they were in terms of their salary cap, and how many good players they have in the books for way cheaper.
And you just think now, like, Bobrovsky, like, we'll get into the obvious, the Carey Price and the Montreal thing very shortly here, but the Bobrovsky thing, you're like 10 years at $10 million. And like, Columbus has been just they were awful for so many years. They finally get Bobrovsky off of like one hot year where he drags the team to the playoffs. They, sweep Tampa and then they lose the next round. Okay, then Florida gives them this massive deal with like really like objectively nothing behind it that says this is going to work out.
Yeah, past regime. It's just showing the case of, hey, this is why it matters. This is why when they say, hey, you need players who can outplay their contracts. Actually, the Panthers are a good example in terms of what happens when that culture shifts. Because you look at that year where they signed the last year with Dale Talon, where they give Sergei Bobrovsky $10 million, versus this year where Carter Verhaeghe is making, under Bill Zito, where Carter Verhaeghe is making like $1.5 million and ends up like, with 30 points? Like something like insanely good. They signed a bunch of players to bargain deals that ended up paying off big time because they did a better job managing the culture of how they approach free agency.
Yes.
That's huge. So the Sedins coming in, gives me hope, at least for I guess not July 1st this year, but whatever, I don't know the official free agency date this year. When that comes up, it gives me hope that at least that mentality might be more widely approached in terms of the Canucks management, because that's important. That's a huge importance of not giving away the entire Brinks truck for one guy, and looking at quantity when it comes to some bargain contracts. So
that's the interesting thing, is that according to like their press conference, their first like official day is July 1st. So I think free agency is always July 1st. I don't think it's changed this year either. No, it's changed this year because they had to factor in for the fact that the Cup Finals will probably not finish. Will not be done. The expansion draft, the regular draft. So it's been moved, I believe, to like I want to say like July 20th or 15th. Like it got moved this year because because remember, keep in mind last year it moved to like October 1 or something because of the pandemic and everything. So this year I think it's a little in later July than the first. So if their contract is for like a full year or for 2 years or whatever, then it would expire July 1st in a normal year when it's free agency window time. So like to your point, I really hope they kind of see the way the league's going. They see what's happening in Florida. Maybe they've talked to Lou a bit and they've been like, "Hey Lou, what worked in Florida?" And he said,
"Hey Lou,
finding cheap depth."
Yeah. Come
be
be the new GM. That's what this is all building to. This is
all
GM
building to
Roberto
2011. Well, okay, so this is also interesting. When the Sedins were announced, did you see like all the media guys tweet or quote tweeting Kevin Bieksa, and they're like, "Oh man, he unblocked all of us."
I did not. I did see that.
So
that's right.
A part of me is like, is this like the Chicago reuniting the band with players to play for them, but it's the Sedins are going to weasel their ways in
instead,
and they're going to weasel the 2011s, like all the smart guys from 2011 to
we'd like to announce our new capologist, Rafi Torres.
It'll be
that'd be very
Lee
funny.
Sweat. It'll be Lee Sweat. He's an accountant.
Lee Sweat. There we go.
Oh my
Literally,
God.
like head of scouting, Christian Ehrhoff. Like you just get an entire list of like some of like the Canucks guys coming in. Actually, Christian Ehrhoff might be a very good power play coach. You never know.
Power play coach or like a D coach or something.
Yeah, that might be cool. But yeah, that would be interesting. That is interesting. That he.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting.
That does answer the question. That is like maybe Bieksa is going to end up. I don't know if that's his end goal, but like, hey, maybe he wants to do management.
We've seen him analyze like game. Like honestly,
he's a genius. He's a smart guy.
panel is only as good as what he is analyzing in the interview.
Jennifer Boardroom are the two.
Yes,
the two
I don't.
On that
I don't mind Carolyn. Oh God, what's her name?
Natalie Spooner? Are you thinking of her?
It's the other girl with Ron McLean and Kelly Rudy.
That's Jennifer Bottero, isn't it?
No, Cassie Campbell.
Cassie Campbell.
Yes, that's who I'm thinking of. I do not find her analysis good at all. I think she's too monotonous for my liking. So whenever BX is on there and he's making like teeny tiny like acknowledgments of D plays or positioning or whatever, and then they cut to Kelly Rudy or her and they're like, "Oh, this is really good. You see the captain, he's shaking everyone's hands, he's patting everyone on the butt. It's good character stuff." And you're like, "Oh my God, this is horrendous analysis." While this guy, it's like going from
BX is a damn to be fair, BX is the Charles Barkley of Hockey Night in Canada. Like he's the star, he's the guy.
It's like going from a panel where like the first three people are like discount blogs you can see on Twitter, like blogs such as cometsharvest.com. And then
I was about to say, hey, wait a minute.
The far right is Bieksa, and that's Harmon Dial's like athletic posts where you just read them and you feel like the stupidest person because
now that's a podcast. Juice and Dial. That'd be a good show.
Juice on the Dial would be pretty dope.
That would be a very good show. That'd be those two together would be a very interesting combo. I'd pay for that. I'd pay good Patreon money for that.
Yeah. Anyways, we're getting on some serious.
We're getting very off topic today.
Why
but
don't we move on to away from the Canucks things if you want?
Okay. I honestly wanted to before we go into like some of the other NHL stuff.
Sure.
There were a couple things I just wanted to go over before we get like with the Henrik and Daniel. I guess one thing I wanted to ask, like just in the general sense of like from what you think and like for our own interest here, if there was like some sort of advice you would be giving, like let's say we were able to give Henrik and Daniel advice on how they should on going into this, not from a here's what you need to do sort of thing, but just in terms of like what they should be expecting going into this job. Like what kind of advice do you think you'd be giving them going into this?
I'd be like, Henrik, Daniel, whatever you do, just keep fight. Like even if you agree with what John and Jim are saying, think of something completely different and just pitch it, because this organization needs variety and different voices. And even if it's something you don't even agree with, just throw it in there, because this organization needs something else added to it. It's like, I don't want to go through another free agency period seeing God, who's it going to be now? Is it going to be Carter Verhaeghe on a $4x4 million deal to replace Beagle? Is it going to be trading for Matt Martin and giving him a retroactive no move clause because they like his tenacity and think he can replace Jay Beagle or Brandon Sutter? Like,
yeah,
there needs to be a complete cultural shift in what they think will build a better contender. I liked a lot of what they had said in their presser, where they were basically saying, you know, it's about the youth and getting them to a next level and insulating them with pieces that actually work. Combine that with their comment about people overplaying their contracts. I really am hoping they are leaning heavily on finding bargains in the market instead of setting trends in the market. And so by that, I would say stick with that. Stick with trying to be the ones finding edges and finding loopholes. Don't be the ones creating like market trends. Like, that's a horrible idea.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice, basically.
That's a good one. Like, you don't be the team that you don't need to be the team that signs the big fish free agent to the big blockbuster contract. You can just be the team that flies under the radar and signs a bunch of guys that are just here to that are looking for a shot kind of thing. That's good advice. Yeah. Okay. Mine is kind of two answers because, like, let's say I'm talking to them before they take the jobs officially. My advice would have been to them is make sure, it would have been very much like, this sounds very cynical, but it's like make sure that this is what you want to do, because by the time you're done, you might not love the sport and the team the way you did before. It could drastically change the way. I'm sure this was advice given to them. If they talked to Trevor Linden, talked to them about it, that would be some advice they got. I'm sure from just about any player that's had more, I guess, negative experiences with either the Canucks or another franchise, that would be good. That would be advice they get. That'd be advice they get is, because sometimes it can seeing how the sausage gets made can kind of ruin your experience with it and how much you enjoy it. So, beforehand, I would have just been like, you might not feel the same excitement or enjoyment for the Canucks as a franchise and as a team the way you did when you left the game as a player. So just make sure that this is, because that's the risk you run if it doesn't necessarily go the way you want it to. That would have been my advice for that. Now my advice would be more of the line of I think it would be very similar to yours. It would be that idea of, definitely look for, sometime make sure you be comfortable playing the devil's advocate if you have to, even if, like you said, even if you do agree with what the room, make sure you look to find the flaws in the logic sometimes, because not to be like a jerk or something, but just because that's important. It's important
to be contrarian for the sake of.
It's about fact checking, and it's about just kind of going for showing, like, it's basically asking whenever someone finds something, even if you agree with it, you do the "can you show me all your work" kind of thing. Mentality. Show me all your work here. Even if it's,
what have we not thought of right here?
You might have gotten to, what are we missing? Is there something that we are not thinking of right now that we could be missing from this that could make this go wrong, sort of thing. Yeah. As well as just also, and this won't factor in as much because, again, they're special advisors. They're not like in a decision, like a final say kind of role. Remember that because of how good you were, that players are not, that some of the stuff that might have brought you success won't always be the way that other players found success. Remember that not every player is unique and different when it comes to making decisions and tough decisions when it comes to them. One of the things that I think one of the good examples of this is like when Wayne Gretzky was the coach for the Coyotes. One of the things that I think that a lot of people have talked about as why that could have gone wrong is because, Wayne Gretzky was Wayne Gretzky. He never had to worry about coaching himself or being coaching people because he was Wayne Gretzky. He was naturally incredible at what he did. So it's hard to give Wayne Gretzky for Wayne Gretzky to give advice to a fourth line grinder because he never was one.
Yeah, he never had to be one.
He never had to be one. So he never had that experience of being that good, being that, having to fight for a spot. He was always going to be top line.
Yeah.
So,
I liked,
and you mentioned, you made kind of the quip about how, when it comes to AHL players asking for advice from the Sedins, they'd be like, I don't know, ask Chris Tanev. He was the last guy to do it. I think that was your joke that you made. But that is kind of true to a sense of the path that you took to getting to the NHL and the success you found at the NHL is going to be very different from a lot of the players that you end up managing and talking to on a regular basis. The stars are are going to be the most important players that you need to have in your corner, yes. But the ones that you're going to be dealing with on a more common occasion are going to be fourth line guys or AHLers or guys who are not going to be maybe the big name. So it's just about being able to make sure that you understand that the way that you guys found success at the NHL individually or with each other is going to be different from those guys. And you're going to have to be able to see the situations that you're going to have to be able to understand their paths to the NHL as well as your own, if you're going to be able to give them advice and be able to help them get better. Because they can't just make Sedinery on the ice the way you guys did. They're going to have to they have to get a little bit more creative about how they get their offensive abilities going. So that's the best advice I can give to them.
Yeah. Well, why don't we move into some playoff action? It is Wednesday, 7:15. The Tampa Bay Lightning and the New York Islanders are playing in an elimination game, Game 6. Currently, Tampa Bay is up 2-1. A play just got blown dead because Leo Komarov put his glove over the puck and hand passed it, and then he started losing it on the refs that they called it, which...
That sounds like an Uncle Leo thing to do. That sounds
a little bit. We could probably... I mean, not so much this
well, let's
series.
Do this we could do this in two ways. Let's say the Islanders win tonight, which they just nearly got it. They just nearly got the tying goal here, because it's only 2-1. It's let's say the Islanders win tonight, because I feel like that's the shorter conversation to have. So we'll start with the shorter one first, which is Islanders win tonight. How do you think they fare going into Game 7?
I think it's a complete toss-up. This series has fucked with my perception of both teams, frankly. Half the time I'm like, the last game was an 8-0 blowout of the Islanders. And it was the biggest blowout in playoff hockey since 2001, I think they said. Jeez. That was one game. Every other game before was like a nail biter to the very end.
2-1.
The game previously, Ryan Pulock stopped a goal with his bare hand on the goal line with 1 second left. I do not know who is better in this series because it shifts so dramatically every single game. Now, it seems like, I don't know, Tampa's faring well on the goal scoring, but Islanders are dominating with chances. But I don't know. If it goes to a Game 7, it could be another 9-0 blowout for Tampa. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, this series, to me. It's very funny to me that the day of that 8-0 blowout, Lou Lamoriello wins GM of the year. That rocks so hard.
Hilarious. Hey, again, why are we doing GM of the year after the second round of the playoffs? That is very, very dumb.
Check out our last episode for that.
If you want to do it after the playoffs are over, sure, why not? If you want to do it after the regular season, sure, why not? Don't do it in the middle of the playoffs. That's the dumbest thing in the world. And Lou Lamoriello, he hasn't actually done, funny story, he hasn't actually done that good a job. The whole team is capped out, and they're not going to be able to bring back most of these guys next year. They built a cup window based on a relatively mediocre team, and it's already about to shut on them right quick.
They already had to lose Devin Taves for 2 picks to be able to be cap compliant. Like
they were lucky their defense didn't take a huge step back this year, but it's probably going to this time around. Oops.
I was laughing so hard because, like, of course, everyone was like, "Oh, you're evaluated as a GM for this year only." And it's like, but this year only, even then, it's still a very bad body of work because with all of his deals, it was all because he's capped out for next
even
season.
Then they finished what? They were the last team to clinch in their division. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So they were fourth because they played top seed Pittsburgh. Yeah. They were fourth. How is that a great GM job? How does that warrant a great job by the general manager that the team finished fourth in their division? Wow. What an accomplishment. The Canucks almost did that this year and they were terrible. Yeah. So that's not a great accurate depiction, I would say. Again, they're just basing it off of the fact that they won 2 playoff series, one against Tristan Jarry and the other against Boston.
That is the biggest asterisk on it too, is like their first round series was close until Tristan Jarry forgot how to play goaltender.
Literally, if Pittsburgh just had a more stable goaltending, they win that series. Like, come on. I'll give them the Bruins series on merit. Like, there's merit for sure that they won. And again, there's merit in all playoff series victories and the fact that you take advantage of the opportunities when given to you. Mm-hmm. But let's be honest, they don't make it out of round 1 if the Penguins have at least somewhat stable goal.
Like, if they have a goaltender who isn't handing over the puck.
A cup for here and there. Like, come on. As in giving away a game in OT or isn't giving up a bunch of just softy floaters in the sixth game. Yeah. Like, come on. It's such a weird one. And I'll say this, in terms of the way that the Islanders got schooled 8-0 in that one game, that was an anomaly, to be totally fair. Yeah. On that particular, I'm not basing this all based on the fact that they lost 8-0. I'm basing this on the whole work. Again, show your work. This is 3 years now without Tavares. They've done some great stuff.
They've made it happen every season.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah, they've done some very good stuff in that time, but they're also now incredibly capped out with a team that's arguably not really a cup team. They're still clearly a step behind the Tampa Bays of the world, and that's not good. You can't be that clearly not good enough compared to the other teams if you want to win a cup.
So here's my little hot take here. I have a feeling Lou Lamoriello, his team is going to lose the playoffs here right now. I have a feeling they're going to trade away 1 to 2 very good players to Seattle so that they take away Andrew Ladd's contract. And then that way they can re-sign.
Is Andrew Ladd still on their books?
For another 2 years.
Oh, well.
At $5.5 million.
Oh, my God.
Yes, that 2016 class, man, it's brutal, dude. That's the thing is, oh man, wouldn't you take, if you're the Canucks or the Islanders, wouldn't you take Kyle Okposo right now? His contract's terrible, but he's still producing and playing the games, even though he has injury problems in Buffalo. Andrew Ladd can't even crack this lineup, and Louis Eriksson is a healthy scratch when he's on the ice playing in games.
In fairness, Andrew Ladd's contract was signed by Garth Snow, so that's not just so we're clear to everyone listening, we're not blaming Lamoriello for signing that contract.
Yes, but they need to re-sign Pelech.
They have a lot of
Beauvillier. I think Scott Mayfield is due for a contract extension as well.
Yeah. Beauvillier being a big one. Kiefer Bellows is a big one. Cizikas is a UFA.
Yes. They have.
I don't know if they
core pieces. They have core pieces that are probably going to be shed for nothing. And so the only solution I can think of, if you're Lou Lamoriello, who has cap space, well, there's a brand new franchise, not in my conference, that has tons of cap space, and I can shed whoever I want to them for free, so long as I get the right deal. So I think
you're worried that they're going to give away, say, Josh Bailey.
I have a feeling they're going to give them. They're going to give
Andrew Ladd.
They might give Seattle Eberle and some young player They're basically gonna my hot take is the Islanders are going to be this expansion draft's Florida. They are going to hand Seattle a first line so that they can keep the guys that they have to re-sign. Because none of the players that are signed to these big deals, like Anders Lee,
Jean-Gabriel Pageau is making $5 million for 5 more years.
All of their core forwards aren't bad. Like they're not in a Jay Beagle position or a Louis Eriksson position where you're like, hey, maybe they go on long term. Like maybe they go on LTIR. These guys still have value, but they're not going on LTIR anytime soon. They're all still core, like top 9 players.
They're decent right now, but they're going to fall off in a few years, and it's going to be hell when they do.
Well,
so
that's not even that's not even my issue. Is like my whole issue is that like the players that they do have on these deals, they're not even like injury. They don't move the needle enough. You can't even like structure your cap so that like, Anders Lee is going to be on LTIR all for next season, and then he's going to be back in the playoffs. All of that money is tied up in good players. All their money is tied up in good pieces that you can't hide. Like that's the thing. You can't hide Anders Lee on LTIR for a whole full season, barring him actually needing like some, season-ending surgery like Kucherov did, right? That's my whole point is the money that they do have, they can't really work with it. And a lot of that is on Lou Lamoriello for signing a Jay Pageau to a $5 million deal to putting Barzal on a bridge. Like they have giving so Scott much
Mayfield
money.
1.5, like close to $1.5 million for
Matt Martin 3 years at $1.5 million
for 10 points. Like, good Lord.
All that money, it just adds up. And because they cannot just be like, 4 of our guys making $5.5 million, they are on LTIR, so we could re-sign Beauvillier and Pellich. Like, nope. Yeah. They're probably going to lose all of them and have to rebuild their D-core with ELC players, basically. Because they got nothing else. Like, they're so screwed. It's so funny that people are like, you evaluate him on this year, and next year is a different evaluating period. It's like, no, it's got to be the body of work, and the body of work is screwed his next year.
And I mean, the GM of the otherwise, if we're talking about just the year, the real GM of the year award is the damn Stanley Cup. So hey, you know who did the best job? The team that won the championship. That's who did the best job. Either that or, if you want to know a more accurate one, there's also the President's Trophy, which is based on 82 games of work. So you could just go off that of who was the best GM. So, if you're going to talk, we're talking about GM of the year. Yeah, it should be based on the whole body of work because there's already ways to evaluate which team was best in the regular season and the playoffs. Mm-hmm. That's already awards. So, yeah, it should be based on that. I think with the Islanders, again, we're not saying they're not good. They're a good team. They're doing great. They're in the conference finals. You don't get there by fluke. That's totally fair. But it's clear that they're a step behind. And there's no real way that they're going to, this seems like where the wheels are going to come off here is next season because they have too many players that they need to re-sign with, not enough cap to do it. That's just how it's going to go. Are we about
on that exact note?
The Islanders tie the game.
Scott Mayfield, the player they need to re-sign, has just tied the game at 2 with a gorgeous below the bar goal.
After I just talked to him, whoops, that's some real foreshadowing right there. That's very funny.
That is incredible.
Again, this conversation could change entirely based on what happens, but.
That was to my point. It's like this series makes no sense. It could be either teams. Now I'm like, we can get into the next series because do you get this feeling now that the Montreal Canadiens run is gonna lead to them winning a cup? Just based on honestly, how well they're looking against Vegas. They looked. It's not even that they're
they were the their way better team in the game.
Good.
They were incredible
on the road.
Holy shit!
Without their coach.
without their coach, which I think is helping them. But yeah, exactly. Oh my God, they're a very good hockey team. They're fun,
and it's not like it's Montreal.
People are like, they're the Islanders light. It's like, sorry, no, they're fun and entertaining. Don't give me that bull.
Their 3v3 strategy sucks, but
I'll see your one Matthew Barzell, and I will raise you Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Tyler Toffoli, and Jeff Petrie. Like
Nick Suzuki, who has 20 points as a 21-year-old in these playoffs right now. Like,
he has the most. Okay, just to give you, just so you got, like, I don't know, for any of you who aren't like total like stat nerds, just to give you a little bit of intrigue here. I mean, you probably are stat nerds if you're listening to the show, but from mine, I believe the stat is that he is now tied for the most points by a player under the age of 20 or like 20 or under in a single postseason, with Wayne Gretzky, and I think the other was Mario Lemieux. Like, holy shit!
That is very good
most
company.
Most playoff points before you turn total if you're 20 and under. So, and he's done it all in 1 year, or like I guess 2 years, 2 playoff years. Like, holy cow, that's nuts! Just wild how good he's been. And Cole Caulfield had a little trouble getting going in the early parts. Now all of a sudden he's just rolling. He is just trucking the Knights like at every turn. Like that first goal was just the defense just let him walk in and put the puck in. It was incredible. Like they are just stomping over the Knights right now. Yeah, I honestly think they're going to win a damn cup. Like
it feels like that, and it's going to be the same thing where we're like, okay, are the Habs that good, or are the Vegas Golden Knights exceptionally good at making series very hard on themselves?
Yeah, literally.
Because historically, that's how it always goes. Series that should be winnable become a complete train wreck nightmare. And it's they're making this series look so hard when is it really that hard? Or is Vegas just like I think you were saying to me in a DM, do they just like have no willpower that they get behind the 8 ball and they just fall apart?
It's
because that's how it feels.
It's not that they have no willpower so much as it's kind of the Toronto problem where it's the when it rains it pours kind of thing. So like the second the going gets a little tough, because all you know is whenever the going gets tough, everything goes wrong. That mentality is now ingrained in you. And for the Knights, they went to a cup final that first year, but then you factor in the whole 4 goals on one 5-minute major in a game 7, prior to which they had already blown to a 3-1 series lead. You go into last year where they nearly choked it against the Canucks because Thatcher Demko turned into a god, and then it fell apart and it completely just rattled them going into the Dallas series. You talk about the fact that Cam Talbot nearly stole their first round series this year against them. This team has now built into itself this mentality where they're not able to come back facing adversity when they face adversity. When they're rolling, they're able to get going. They're able to keep it rolling. But a second it starts going wrong, everything falls apart for them a little bit. And that's it. And that is super, super dangerous. And it can absolutely kill any chance of a long run for you. And I think that is definitely part of it. But the Canadiens have been doing a very good job at like minimizing their opportunities. Carey Price has been playing incredibly well. Albeit though he hasn't actually had to deal with as many scoring opportunities as he has in points past. And I think also this is partially due to who's coaching them as well. Like I think, look, I'm not going to dump too hard on coaches that get themselves to 2 conference finals in back-to-back years, have been to multiple cup finals, what have you. But Pete DeBoer is terrible at managing goalies. I'm just going to say right now, he's terrible at managing goaltenders. He is the worst at it. He completely destroyed any confidence Martin Jones had in San Jose. And right now he's doing this to his own goaltending tandem. Like, he's breaking them a little bit. People aren't going to maybe understand what I'm talking about here if you haven't been a goaltender, but like when he pulled, here's the thing. What? Have I been a goalie? I've dabbled.
Here and there.
Here and there. So I'm going to explain this as best I can. At least this is my personal opinion. Maybe some other goalie experts will tell you otherwise, but this is what I saw when I saw like the last couple decisions he's been making. Game 3, Fleury makes that miscue. Makes the miscue, leads to the Josh Anderson goal, ends up losing it overtime. Yeah. Next game, Leonard comes out. A lot of people are going to say, well, this is just about giving Fleury a break. I don't think that's true. I think that what happened was Pete DeBoer saw his goalie make one mistake one crucial mistake. Regardless of how crucial it is, he saw him make one mistake after being incredible for pretty much the entire playoffs, being their best player throughout the entire postseason, and basically giving a vote of no confidence and going to Robin Lehner in the next game. Yeah. Already bad. Leonard plays incredibly well. Plays a great game, 2-1, wins 2-1 in OT. Then he goes back to Fleury. So not only in that case, so now you've done two things. Now you've done multiple things wrong in one decision, because not only have you already hurt Fleury's confidence by taking him out after making one mistake in a game and basically saying, I don't have the confidence in you to get things done, things done on a consistent enough basis. And now I'm going to put you back in after basically showing you with my actions that one mistake and you're back on the bench. I'm going to put you back in for a crucial game 5, while also telling Leonard that, hey, your best isn't good enough. Yeah. Like, well done.
Yeah. Thanks for like the clutch performance, but
back to the bench, back to the basement with you.
Yeah.
Like, that's back to the press box with you. Like, that's terrible goalie management. If you want to put Leonard in, there are much better ways to go about it than that. That is not one of them. Like, if you want to give Fleury a break, sure, do it in game 2 or in game 3. Like they did it in game 1 of that series against Colorado, which ended up being a huge blowout. But I was like, at the time, I was kind of like, this is a bit of an odd choice, but game 1, what's the worst that can happen kind of thing, right? And sure, it went wrong, but still, it gave you still time to come back and win that series, which they did. Yes. Here, he completely just botches it with both of his goaltenders. Two very good goalies. Like
he could have had a brilliant situation too, where he puts in Leonard, he wins the one game, and he rides Leonard for the rest of the playoffs because Leonard suddenly runs hot.
Or he does what they do in the Olympics, or in international competition, where it's like, okay, you got the baton until you lose, then we go to the next guy, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or you could take, like, again, I think eventually we might even get closer to like somewhat of like the baseball pitcher approach, where you'll see teams kind of just putting goalies on a rotation and just going, all right, it's Fleury then Leonard, it's Fleury then Leonard. You could, because theoretically they could do that if they wanted. They're both capable.
For sure.
They could do that. Hockey mentality has just not gotten there yet. They've not gotten comfortable with that idea yet, and that's fine. But geez, like Pete DeBoer is getting 100% outcoached. And my friend of the show, JD Young, he's been on a couple episodes with me before, had a great tweet where he's like, it's peak, or I believe that this might have been in connection to one of his tweets where it was like, Pete DeBoer is getting outcoached by a team that doesn't have its head coach. Just peak, which is peak Pete DeBoer. Like, incredible. Getting outcoached by a team that does not have one right now is very much a very Pete DeBoer thing to do. And like, yeah, you're ruining a good situation. You're ruining what could have been a perfect situation for yourself. We have two NHL caliber starting goaltenders, and somehow you're destroying both of their confidence and their ability to earn starts. It's just, it's mind-blowing how badly he's botched this from his goaltending department, at least. But what's weirder is the fact that that's probably not even their biggest worry, when you consider the fact that the nice forward group has only scored 4 goals in 5 games. 4.
And it's all from one line.
They're like they're supposed to be an all-star team of NHL, like these of basically high quality NHL talent. They can only get 4 goals
Yeah,
from
it's
their
wild.
like, how the hell are you manage that? Like, just wild. And okay, and I know I've been going off on a long enough tangent here, but you said, like, you asked the question of, like, can the Canadiens win the cup? Can the Canadiens win the cup? Like, before I went into it with the mentality of, well, they're going to get crushed by Vegas, so it's fine.
Yeah,
I don't think anything's
exactly.
going to happen after that. I'm not taking that approach with the Canadiens anymore. They're going to win the cup because, like, otherwise I would be like, well, yeah, but they're going to get beaten up by Tampa, right?
It
Didn't happen this time. Why is it going to happen the next time? This is the Montreal Canadiens year to go on one of the weirdest cup runs of all time. They're going to end up winning their 25th Stanley Cup in a completely different way than any of the other 24.
It has all the makings of like a Cinderella run, and I mean, we don't know what the outcome of this current Islanders Tampa game is, but against the Islanders, I feel like the Habs might like kind of edge out with the goal scoring. Like they're running hot, frankly. Like they're getting scoring out of all their lines. Their defensemen are playing good. Their penalty kill is fucking amazing. Their penalty kill is running at like 93%. They've stopped every single penalty kill of the last 11 games now or something like that. It's filthy how good it is.
Which again will come in super handy if they play Tampa as well. Like that'll definitely be a huge plus in their category if they get the Lightning or the Islanders. But yeah, like,
and how many goals have the Habs scored after shutting down a PK? Like at least 5 or 6 in this series alone comes immediately after.
Goals too.
Yeah, like I said, they're just getting goals out of everyone basically in every scenario. It would be at the very least an entertaining as hell series if the Habs somehow close it out against Vegas in their next game. That would be super rad. And it just has the makings of like there's so many storylines going into it. Like Carey Price, there's all these doubts about his giant deal. Like, are they ever going to win with Carey Price? And now suddenly he's on this heater of a series where he's carrying like the Montreal with like elite goaltending. They have the whole basically being buoyed by a free agent acquisition from the Canucks and 2 rookies in Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield in their goal scoring depth. Like from what I've seen of Vasilevsky, he really struggles on his glove side. And you know who loves shooting like high shelf on glove sides? It's Cole Caulfield and Tyler Toffoli. So, I mean, who knows? Yeah. There's still a lot of hockey remaining to be played, but it would be incredibly exciting if we get to see an all-Eastern Stanley Cup final. Like that is wild because
again, the bulletin board material of them winning the Clarence Campbell Bowl. Oh
Western
my
Conference
God.
champs.
Your Western Conference champions. The Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, like that rules. It makes no sense, but
awesome.
It actually rocks.
I mean, the NHL does almost have precedent of that because the Leafs were in the Western Conference for a few years at one point, but they didn't win any Clarence Campbell Bowls. So it would be very funny if the Canadiens did it this year after the NHL basically was like, yeah, we don't think you're going to win, so we're just going to we're already preemptively ready to give the Knights their Western Conference championship.
That's like what plays into the whole Cinderella run thing,
incredible. Too. Yeah, literally everyone is literally like, well, I shouldn't say that because again, people misconstrue that as me saying people are like want to rig it against certain teams, which is not how I think the NHL generally operates, except for in 2011. That's the only year.
That's the true rigging of all riggings, basically.
Yes. And even that wasn't necessarily a concerted effort, as much as it was just a couple just jerks in the wrong departments at the right time, kind of thing for that.
Helping out their son.
Yeah, exactly. Who could we be talking about?
Yeah,
but the Habs could very much do it. Like I was very much thought there was no chance in hell that they were going to get through. The Knights, and here they are up 3-2.
Hey, look at us. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, literally. Again, it's the house money principle of there is no pressure. Even if they lose game 6, like there is zero pressure on Montreal because they were not supposed to get this far. So who cares? Like they're going to be playing just the most carefree hockey of their life in game 6, whereas the Knights are literally going to be nervous wrecks. Like everything falls apart.
Of pressure. Like start, like you're saying, the starting goaltender, is it Leonard? Is it Fleury? Like what is he going to do? Because if DeBoer picks the wrong goaltender for an elimination game and he loses, like, oh my God, he's gonna be fired faster than Gallant was.
I mean, all the different things that could factor into this is just nuts. But yeah, I think they'll win game. I think they'll win game 6. I'm going to make the prediction now. David Quadrelli has a tweet where he said Habs in 6 before the series started, and I remember thinking, that's a good one, Quads. Holy, that's why, and we know that they have the betting thing on their show. So it'd be very funny if he's like, yeah, so I'm a millionaire now on the next episode.
I also hope that they win because I tweeted after they had won their series, Habs or the Habs are going to goalie the Vegas.
Yeah.
And so, it looks exactly like that. It's a bit of both. Like it's not
they're
just
defensing them; they're doing it all. They're
forward. They're forward.
It's just a whole team of Thatcher Demkos. That's just what we're watching. It's just a whole team of them. I
was gonna say, I hope that what's the name? I hope the Habs win because I think the worst case scenario is Vegas somehow forces game 7. And it's like a 1-goal game. They win, but they're so morally defeated by the fact that they couldn't score that they do exactly what they did against Dallas in the playoff bubble, and they win a single game and then just get steamrolled for the other 4. And it's just like this ho-hum Stanley Cup Finals. Like the last few Stanley Cup Finals have had zero intrigue because it was such a clear disparity of, who was the winner. Like
the Tampa Blues one was really good. That was a very good series.
I didn't like the hockey.
The hockey was not the kind of hockey that we enjoy, just based on like what kind of hockey strategy we like to see out of teams, I think. But
I also don't like any of the players on the Blues or the Bruins. Right. So it was kind of like I don't enjoy this on like a fundamental level where it's like I mean, I guess I like Vlad Tarasenko, like sure.
I'm just saying more or less like devil's advocate, just to be devil's advocate in the sense of like there are people who definitely found that particular series good. Like there are definitely, and there are lots of them, but like, I see where you're coming from on maybe not being the same level of intrigue for you that say maybe like the first Pittsburgh Sharks series had. Or Washington Vegas was a very good series.
Washington Vegas was a very intense series, even though it was only 6 games or whatever. Dallas, Tampa. I mean, you kind of pulled for Anton Khudobin because he's like seemed like a really fun guy, but like otherwise, like I don't like any of the players on the Stars. Like I wanted to see
Pavelski win a cup, but yeah. They're just one of those teams.
Exactly.
At least in Vancouver here, we don't have a huge opinion on the Dallas Stars on a daily basis, right?
Correct.
So I get that, but I think Montreal Tampa would be, or Montreal Islanders for that matter, would be a real good series.
Yeah, regardless of what the outcomes are the next 2 games, because I believe we could be seeing one finalist by the time we record next, which will be on Friday. At least whatever combination of teams it's going to be, there's some intrigue regardless, because like I said, with the Islanders Tampa series, no clue who's going to come out on top. Vegas Habs, I think the Habs are going to do it, but even then Vegas could come out of nowhere and remember that they're a lot better than they've been playing. And suddenly it's game 7 or the series for them. Right. There's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of great players on all 4 teams that you would like to see win a cup. Like hometown kid, you see Matt Barzal like go to a cup final because he's been playing fucking amazing against Tampa. That's pretty dope. You see Corey Perry in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals with 2 different teams, and finally he wins.
Yeah.
Corey Perry's like a dirty player most of the time, but
players.
That's rad.
The Canadiens are full of players that you want to see win a cup. Like Carey Price, absolutely want to see Carey Price win a cup. I want to see Toffoli win another cup because he's got 2 already. Or sorry, he's got just the one. He's got the one. He was not there for the 2012 Kings. He was just 2014.
My dad called me on my birthday, and we were talking about the hockey playoffs, obviously, because we were in a pool together.
Yeah, this guy's 31, guys. Happy birthday to my boy.
Oh God. He's like, I was like, so who are you really rooting for? Because like your team's Pittsburgh, and they kind of fell apart because of goaltending. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. And then we were talking about the Habs, and I was like, man, Carey Price, local kid. They got a lot of players I like. And he's like, in 61 years, I have never once rooted for the Habs, and I'm rooting for them now because I like Carey Price, and that's it. So
that's a great reason.
That's the impact of Carey Price, baby. He is such a lovable, likable guy. Yeah. And if he could find just for the how many years in a row have we seen the Carey Price contract? It's never going to pay off. They're never going to win with that contract.
Yeah.
At least if they get to a cup final with him on that deal, you can kind of be finally he made it.
Yeah.
At least with the deal existing, proving that you could, in theory, win with someone on a $10 million contract. Because last year, I don't think, what was the stat? It was not all the players on $10 million or more contracts were out of the playoffs by the first round or something, because Toronto was bounced.
Edmonton, you can go down the list.
Chicago was out, so it was everyone's gone, right? So from that perspective, it would be interesting, just so it kind of changes the narrative a bit from this is why stars are overpaid. It's no, stars can get paid and you can still win. It's just
stars can get paid because they can will a team to the finals whether you like it or not. Sometimes that's why they get paid the big bucks. That would be good. And there's in Brendan Gallagher, former Vancouver Giant, winning a cup would be awesome for us in this market. Not as many people for a lot of other markets. That's the deterrent of why they don't want to win, because they don't like Brendan Gallagher because he's feisty. But for us in Vancouver, obviously that's a reason why to like them. I mean, there's a lot of reasons there. There's a lot of good. Yeah.
Cole Caulfield, making its NHL debut and then being a top
winning
5 scorer.
Every award ever possible in 1 year, besides the Calder, incredible.
Shea Weber winning a cup.
Shea Weber getting again. There are so many good stories on that group. So you want nothing but success for those guys.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to touch base on before we signed off for the evening, Mr. Lachlan?
Yeah, that is a great question. And speaking of questions, we've got one from we got a listener question this week from @ChrisFaber39, friend of the show, obviously.
Oh, he sounds important.
He sounds important. Yeah, I believe he works. He's a hardworking guy. I believe he's getting a nice vacation for a bit here. And he asks us specifically, and I believe in that line of thinking, he asked us, what's the best song to heavily drink to? Asking for a friend. For reference, mine is Burn It to the Ground by Nickelback.
Chris.
Chris has a lot of takes that I agree with. His pro Nickelback stance. I'm gonna have to. We're on opposite sides on that one.
Christopher.
But I did take some time to think about this, because honestly, here's the thing. As I've mentioned before on the show, we often get a lot of questions in relation to drinks and stuff like that. Again, I am somebody who I'm more of a, I guess I wouldn't say social drinker is the right phrase, but event drinker, I guess would be special occasion drinker. No, party guy is not an accurate one.
No, I mean in the sense you would drink at a party.
I would drink if there's a specific event or occasion to be drinking. So if I'm at a Canucks game, I'll have a drink. If I'm preparing to binge watch a movie series, I'll have a drink. But other than that, I don't drink much. I'm not one of those people that's I'm going to go have a drink and sit on the porch just because. Like, I'm just not that kind of person. And obviously, fine if you are. There's nothing wrong with that.
No judgment from here.
Yeah, no judgment from you. That's just my style. I'm very much I'm only going to drink for like if there's a purpose for me to be drinking kind of thing, or there's like a good reason. That's just my style.
But what is your tune?
Which is why I'm saying like necessarily, I might not necessarily have like a tune because I don't like sit. So I guess but I went through it just kind of like sitting through like kind of like the songs that if I were to have a drinking song, what would kind of be that one? I guess for me, it would be something like Highway Tune by Greta Van Fleet, just by going through my Spotify list of what I have in there.
Yeah.
That kind of is in the realm of like anything really by Greta Van Fleet. Their whole like discography is very much in that category of songs that I'd be like, yeah, it's rock, but it's not like it's not like say like Queen, for example, where it's just very much an experience within itself kind of song. So it's a little bit more of I can sit and listen to this. It's got a good beat to it. It rocks out, but it's not to the point of like where you're focused on singing necessarily, like wanting to sing along to it or something like that, right? So fair. I think it's a good mixture. So I would go with like a Greta Van Fleet song probably on that one. If I had a little more time, I probably could have maybe done a little bit more research, but that was definitely. But those out of just like the brief Spotify research I did for myself and my playlists and everything, that was the song that's Highway Tune is the one that stuck out for me on that.
Hell yeah!
What about you?
I have several because
unlike
you, I am a social drinker. I enjoy my weekends of getting lit with the fam, as I say,
as the kids would say,
as the children of this generation say. There are several on the list. I owe most of these songs to the wifey who puts together some elite drinking playlists. But one that always gets it is. It's tough to do. Running music. I'm bad at it.
It's a good skill. It's an impressive skill. Like being able to put together a good playlist is an undervalued a contribution to society.
Roxy, I always say, like, could have a second career as like a popular DJ if she really wanted to like commit to it. But
if you can build a playlist that people don't feel the need to hit shuffle on, that you've done a great job.
Yeah,
like, that's
exactly.
That's incredible.
That's very hard to do
because shuffle is a very easy way to go about it. So if you can put together a playlist that people will go through 1 to like 20 or whatever, that's incredible. That's impressive.
Yeah. So the jam that always gets everyone going when they're like several claws deep, couple shots have been going around, the drinking games are buzzing. Shania Twain's "Man, I Feel Like a Woman" is everybody
that's a great
throws
one.
The fuck down. That is probably primary number one, and
that's a great choice, elite choice.
The other one is S Club 7's "Bring It All Back." That's an absolute banger. If you don't even know what that is,
yeah. I can't pick out the tune off the top of my head, but that definitely sounds familiar enough that like I'm sure if I listened to it, I'd be like, oh, it's this song. I just probably don't know the name. So okay.
I'll be replying to Christopher Faber with these selections. If you want to see these selections, you can follow me on Twitter at Cody Sievertson, where I will be replying to Chris Faber with all of my favorite drinking jams. You should also follow me, Lachlan, so you can see the drinking jams that I am suggesting to Mr. Faber.
Well, I had to block you after the Luongo takes, so we'll see if you curry my favor back on that front.
Yeah, that's okay.
But otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Lach and the Crease. Or you can check out my website, lachandthecrease.com, where I just posted an article today about ranking the 10 potential names for Abbotsford's new AHL team. My top choice will not surprise you.
Yeah.
But the rest of the list might, so why not go check that out?
Go check it out. You can follow my site as well at cometsharvest.com. In theory, I should have my season recap, all 50,000 words of it, done by Monday, June 28th. barring
2024. That's the
correct.
part he's forgetting. He's omitting.
Yeah,
is that it's 3 years from now.
When the Sedins take over as GM for Jim and John, that's when the recap should be done. That's when I should have probably finished all the context. But yeah, until then, folks, thanks so much for listening to this. Make sure to rate, like, and subscribe to all of our podcast availabilities, whether that's Apple, Spotify. Leave us a review. We appreciate that. Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, Overcast, Podcast Addict. I don't even know. There's so many of them. It's unbelievable.
There's a lot of them.
There's also our YouTube channel where everything is posted in video format. You can check out my wicked tan that I'm rocking. I look fucking awesome. And then there's our Patreon where we also have $1 and $5 content where we post exclusive stuff for you, our fans. We appreciate your guys' support more than anything. We're going to try and put out some more off the post episodes where we just kind of shoot the shit. Obviously, a bit of a delay as Lachlan is chilling in Petaluma and I am really, really, really procrastinating my season recap. And that is most of my spare time when it's not spent poolside soaking up the rays. Until our next episode, folks, go support your local hockey team. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.